Don't you just hate all these games where you're captain of a locomotive in an outer space imagined as both the heavens and a realm colonised by a vicious Victorian empire as hungry as the cosmic entities lurking among the stars? Oh wait, no, because there's nae fucking games like this. Sunless Skies is brimming with imagination, a setting unlike anything I've played before, and one that avoids many of the pitfalls I've come to expect from steampunk and adjacent genre fiction. As mentioned, you're captain of a strange space-traversing locomotive. A steam spaceship, basically. But this isn't space as you or I understand it. No, this is space as envisioned by the Victorians. A place where you can breathe, and there's no zero gravity exactly, you just fall. While the base game, navigating a ship around a hostile world, will be familiar to players of Sunless Sea, this setting makes it an altogether different beast. It's less oppressive than Sea, more vibrant, and not just visually, though the colours of the sky are an exploding rainbow compared with the endless dark and green waters of Sea. See, the quests too reflect a more varied tone, where Sea was an endless voyage of misery where you were almost certainly always picking between two evils at any given moment. Skies is content to have quests with happy endings, one where you can try to make a difference in this bleak world. And it's bleak, make no mistake. For all the colour, the setting itself surrounds a Victorian-themed empire devouring everything it can grasp. Entire planets where people are worked to death in their own little time bubbles. The Victorian machine is scaled up to interstellar proportions and the results are suitably horrific. In this it makes a distinction between itself and much of the fiction that makes up the genre. They revel in either misplaced nostalgia for the likes of the British Empire or simply embrace the propaganda of colonialism. So what you usually end up with is this whitewashed vision with shiny brass everywhere and oh god isn't it all just so quaint. Fuck that, and Sunless Skies has clearly said fuck that and all, because while this is a fictitious world, the parallels to the real British Empire are unflattering and critical. It's a game that wants you to think about the dynamics of power. Where Sea often seemed to delight in dark humour, offering up grim stories with a morbid grin, Skies seems much more keen to actually interrogate and comment upon themes such as colonialism. As a player, you're asked to wrestle with the suffering inflicted by imperialism, even as you're trapped within its systems and economics. A vividly drawn setting is worthless without stellar characters, though, and Skies has a wonderfully unhinged cast. Of course, things start with the player character. You get a whole host of options to define your captain, outlining their backstory, demeanour, etc. The game also does a great job of letting players define their identity outside of their usual binary boundaries. Players can be presenting as male or female, or neither, and the game has a lovely simple system where you choose from a list of titles. My captain goes by Milady Lonesome, and I began the game with a strong sense of her immediately. And roleplaying is a huge part of the fun here. Like any good RPG, each choice is as much about trying to get a nice outcome as it is defining who you are in this world. My tough but unready Lonesome was thrust into the captain's chair too soon, with a whole host of demands on her shoulders from day one, including her beloved captain's final wishes. She's an underdog, blundering her way through one near-death experience to the next. When a game gives me that strong an idea of a character, who in the game itself amounts to no more than a name, title and a silhouette, well, it's doing a lot right. And the people you get to bounce off enrich it so much. You'll have strange figures who fulfill bizarre jobs within this otherworldly empire, and crew you can hire with their own twisted backstories and motivations. Knowing whether you can even trust some of your deckhands is a whole battle in of itself. None of them feel like they exist for the player's benefit, but instead each have their own rich inner lives. If I'm spending a lot of time talking about the narrative content, it's because that's the real meat of Sunless Skies. But that's not to say the moment-to-moment play isn't enjoyable. Players will be steering their little locomotive through hostile space, avoiding all sorts of terrors along the way. You must manage supplies, fuel, and your hull as well as ensure the well-being of your crew. Here the game asks players to play out the simulative element of being this locomotive captain, an aspect that exists unto itself. You can corner trade routes, find profit margins by buying and selling rare goods. Combat is also beefed up from Sea, with your strange spacefaring craft able to strafe. It's more involved, but not exactly a draw in its own right. You'll still run away from enemies far more often than you'll get into fights. The main challenge will be just finding where you have to go. See, for navigation you only ever get compass bearings. North, south, east and west are defined by the brightest stars. And that's it. You can waste an entire journey, plus a whole rack of fuel just trying to find a single port. And it feels frustrating to waste so much time trying to fulfill a questline at a certain destination, when the only barrier is not being sure where to go. Directions that came with landmarks or anything else to latch onto would have been hugely welcome. Thankfully the game does offer a few remedies to minimise frustration. You can play in a mode that allows you to simply revert to the last safe port upon death instead of having to start over. It's optional, but for those more interested in the stories rather than the challenge like me, this is a welcome addition. The major change from Sea though that makes it a much more engaging narrative experience is the pace. While ages could go by in Sea between substantial plot progress, Skies has a greater density of locations and quests. You'll far more frequently bump into things to do, and the distances between goals will be much shorter too. Don't worry though, there are still big overarching quests that will take longer to unravel for those who enjoy taking on the big challenges in sea. And there is a thrill to do a bunch of smaller quests in preparation for a massive expedition. This is, however, a text-heavy game with no voice acting, though other wonderful sounds abound. So if you struggle to engage with that, this won't be your ticket. Though it has to be said, my limit isn't too high for text-heavy titles, and I got on really well with Skies. It keeps things to tight paragraphs, letting a few sentences conjure a whole scene. It's deft, and if you do like text-based stories, then this is one of the finest I've played. A real cut above sea, which I enjoy, but did find overwhelming at times. And that's Skies all over. It feels like a successor that understood its predecessor in a meaningful way, and rather than just iterate slightly upon it, wants to forge a new, richer, faster-paced experience. This is no substitute for the oppressive darkness of Sunless Sea, but it's a dazzling game in its own right. If you like narrative-driven games, then Sunless Skies is a treat whose imagination leaves a lot of games able to do nothing but look up and wonder from their dull grey worlds. Sunless Skies gets an absolute fucking banger from me.